So I made a couple notes while you all were talking. One thing that stood out to me was your comment, I think it was Steve, about training customers, which I'm sure filters to all of your areas. Can you talk a little bit about how do we train our customers? What can they take away from doing that?
I think a great example is a meeting that I attended at a convention hotel in Orlando. And it was a Marriott meeting, so they forced us to become Bonvoy members. They forced us to download the Bonvoy application. They forced us to check in mobily. They forced us to use the mobile key. They were able to take the number of check-in people that they would typically have for that check-in from 15 people down to 3. Now, some of those people, they had to move to back-of-house functions. They had to move to the blocking of the rooms and to sending the mobile check-in notification out and sending the mobile key notifications out, because there is a lot that happens on the back end. But I think about that, and I think about how many notifications we receive from our people planning the meeting to say, check in mobily, get your key mobily, you have to do this, we're forcing you to do this. 1,000 people in that convention, 2 people got a hard key. But when you think about how much training it took for us to do that, you think about, typically when you arrive at an airport today, you have all of these mobile kiosks set up. Most of you, when you flew, you walked in for the first time, you saw that, and you thought, oh man, come on. And then you have to learn. And I still, when I travel and I have to check a bag, I still struggle with how the hell do I put this tag on the bag? And so somebody has to be there to help you with that. We are looking at mobile kiosks. Marriott is rolling out mobile kiosks. Unfortunately, they're only in their select service brand hotels, which for us means we need a hotel, a 600-room hotel, a 1,000-room hotel to truly make that work. But then we will still have to have somebody there in the lobby to help them with that. We will still have to be able to encourage them to use it, to prove to them that it's safe, to prove to them that a mobile key is safe. Talking with people in New York who did the pilot on that, one of the general managers said, placement of it is very important, that you can't have it over in a corner. You have to have it like front and center before they get to the front desk so they see that there is another option for checking in. But he said, just because they see it, it's kind of curious, like, what is that? They don't necessarily use it. So sometimes it's about having a person there. It's about doing the leg work. I think about in COVID, it became more and more important for us to send pre-arrival check-in, pre-arrival emails out. How did we word that? How did it look? Did it encourage people to read it and to actually pay attention to it? Or was it worded and presented visually where they just went, oh, man, I don't have time for this, delete. So all of those things, the preparation in advance when they arrive, what does it look like when they arrive? And then do we have people there who can hold their hands through it and make sure that they're able to feel comfortable using it? But once that happens and once they get used to it, they become more and more okay with it. They become more and more like, okay, this is, I text to get towels, I don't have to call. I text to get, I can use my mobile app to get room service here in the hotel. But this is all, people are really, really busy. And being able to access the technology and understand it and us holding their hand is really, really important.
Yeah, if they're on vacation, they may not want to do work, right? That could feel like work to them.
Get me my key. If I see somebody at the desk who can get this for me, get this for me.
Yeah. How about in the restaurant space? How have you trained customers to
the toughest thing was just, the differences in opinions, and this extends outside of technology, and then I'll get to the technology piece, but when we had all the restrictions and we're trying to do the right thing, you have some customers that are willing to work with you, and then others that are combative. Oh, sorry. I just, sorry. So basically, that was a challenge, training your staff on how to deal with those things, and then training your managers how to deal with those. And then implementing things like what I talked about before, the QR codes, or the like the contactless, pay at table was like a big win for us in a property where we could go without the servers, and all we had to do was run with a manager, and the place pretty much ran itself. And during that period of time, Austin was in a place where things were tough there. So that was a tool that really allowed us to operate and still, service our guests, but also keep people employed in the kitchen. So.
And Damon, any training of customers in your area?
Well, I can think of something that, much like discussed in the keynote today, a lot of new technology started pre-pandemic, and one of those in the meetings planner realm is what's called a meeting services app.
Okay.
That we download on a meeting planner's phone. If you're the meeting planner here today and you notice it's too warm, rather than needing to get up or notify someone that works here at the hotel, you can get on that app and very quickly push an icon to notify the hotel staff that it's too warm in the meeting space, or that we need more coffee, or just any need that you have. That takes training, right?
Yeah.
It's for some meeting planners, it's as simple as how to download an app, right? And then not only how to download the app, but to use its functionality. So typically you do that in the pre-arrival phase, or in what we call a pre-convention meeting before the meeting starts, to teach them how to use that app. The only thing I'll add to that is the app's great, but at the end of the day, what they need is our staff to come and execute their need. So that's what excites me about the fact that we're here today, and hopefully excites you, is we still need you.
Right.
Even though that technology may be helpful to execute the process, we still very much need the staff to pull through what we're trying to get accomplished.
Yeah, very good. That's a great segue into another question I had, which is, how are the jobs of our associates changing? So if there are, that technology is kind of as a supplement, do you see the role of front desk associates or restaurant associates, meeting associates changing to offer a different type of service to guests, or different skill set you're looking for as you're hiring? I know it's been challenging to hire right now, and so as you move things to technology, are you looking for different skills, or what should the students have as they get ready to come into the industry that would be helpful, knowing that it's a balance of that technology and service?
I don't want to start again, so.
Okay, we'll start.
I talk too much. I got to be right up against the timer.
I'm short. For us in the restaurant business, we're trying as hard as we can to get life back to the normal, and we're in the business of experiences, and I think that those personal connections are important in a restaurant. I look at the restaurant business like it's living theater. The stage is set, you pull the curtains, and we're here to entertain, and that's why you go out to a restaurant. If you're hungry, you go to your fridge for that. You go out to eat to have experiences. So with that, it's tough. There's like this battle with technology. I don't want to lose those experiences. I think where technology is going to really come into play is, again, like we talked about, this labor crunch. It's so painful. Not just making it hard to service our guests, but it's hard on our employees because they're doing three people's jobs. And it's inevitable that we as a company are going to have to look at new ways to, the automation piece is not just about saving money, it's about surviving and supporting the people that we have. And just like Damon said, we're going to need all of you. It's not going to eliminate people. But if I were going to do things today, I would just continue to be forward thinking and think about the future, and always be connected and have an open mind, because things are going to change. So, all right.
You reminded me of in the sales arena, we have seen this before, and there's a new technology that's arrived again to book a meeting room online with all of your specs and details, where you do not necessarily need to interact with a salesperson. So theoretically, you could go on the Union Club's website, book this meeting room, put in that you need this table, these microphones, that podium, the number of people at each seat, your menu, etc. But I think that will work for certain meetings, maybe a small board meeting for a few people, but think of all the variables I just rattled off there today. And as the meeting planner, you want to know that all of those details are organized, that the hotel understands it, that you're getting the meeting room that the website says you're getting. I think that still requires a person. And I know to have this sense of security today, if I were running this meeting, I would want to talk to multiple people at the hotel, including an audiovisual person, the food and beverage person, maybe the general manager, to make sure this was on point and ready to go. So relying solely on that technology would concern me as a meeting planner.
Yeah.
However, it might be a nice tool to do their initial search, right, and know the specs of the meeting room and what it holds and what their capabilities are. But at the end of the day, they're going to need one of our salespeople or want one to give them that security. So the last part of your question, for yourselves, is constant change. That's the answer. We've been in this business a number of years. Every year, there's new technology. It was the same when I came out of college as it is today. There's new technology that's going to constantly come at you. I think you've got to either fail quickly with new technology or jump all in. And those who can identify quickly which ones work and don't work, kind of our topic here today, are more successful. But then once you see that technology staying, you've got to pause and master it, and you'll really be set up better for your job, no matter what job it is, if you fully adopt the technology. So,
Very good.
One of the themes is accuracy of information. You as a leader have to make sure that your hotel, your restaurant, they're being represented all over the place. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure that that information is correct, so that when the customer comes to you, they can find the information very quickly, and when they get the information, it's right. So that would be one thing that I would say. That you've got to understand that guest experience starts so much sooner now. It's not just, hey, when they arrive at the front drive. It starts on the internet. You also have to understand that it's not just your paying customer, it's your internal customer, it's the person that you're marketing jobs to. I'm taking a greater role in talent now, and we just implemented a new applicant tracking system. And it has an artificial intelligence aspect of it that is really, really cool. And when I first started interacting with it, I thought it was great because I had a certain type of job I was looking for. It's really cool. Olivia is what it's called. It talks to the applicant. You apply for a job. She says, hey, my name's Olivia. How can I help you today? And it goes through a process of screening. So I thought it was really cool because all I have to do is I just have to look at the person who applies to me and say, schedule an interview, and Olivia actually goes out and can look at my calendar in Outlook and pick 3 times that she presents to the candidate, and then they pick a time, and then boom, it goes on my calendar. When it has been a terrible rollout for the field, because the field has a different type of candidate, they have a different type of need, they have a different way of interacting with it, but also they're really, really busy, and we're asking them to make a major change while they're desperate for associates, and they're really, really busy because they're short-staffed. So that would be the second thing I would say, is you all need to get really, really good at change and being change agents and understanding that there is still a really big human component of this. And the ability to guide people through change and understand that just because you love you're a big gamer, just because you love to text does not necessarily mean that even you are ready for this. But your customer, like you, a 58-year-old guy who, like, texting is fine, but don't take me further than that. You have all different levels of people that you're dealing with when this technology comes to your customer. How do you help them to adapt? And one other thing that I'll say in the internal piece. I believe that robotics are the future, especially when it comes to cleaning. People in the company think I'm nuts. They truly do. They say, oh, you and your robots, you and your freaking robots. We were one of if you may have heard of MadeBot, it's a guy out of Cornell came up with this idea of putting together a robotic vacuum to clean guest rooms. I met him at a conference back in 2016, convinced him that because he's in Austin, we should be his test. So we started testing them at the West End, and for 2 years we dealt with them. Unfortunately, the MaidBot was making our jobs more difficult because people were having to go and vacuum where they missed in the guest rooms. It was taking too long in the hallways. Finally, I just pulled the plug on them. But there's another company called SoftBank who has a vacuum that we can use in the hallways, we can use in meeting rooms and stuff. So we're testing it, we're using it down at our JW in Austin. One of the things I've learned is that we thought what you do with this thing is you put a QR code on the wall, and you map you take the vacuum, you vacuum the hallway, and then that maps it. And then the SoftBank, the Wiz is what they call it, Wiz runs that course. And so we thought, simple, you just drop the vacuum in place. It runs its thing, what could be better? And when you talk about then your associate can stock closets, can strip rooms, can do all those things that right now they didn't have time for, which I think goes back to technology is there, but the human piece, now you're able to do other stuff that make the customer's experience that much better, or make the experience for your internal customer, your associate, that much better. They're able to better support their housekeepers. What we underestimated was how big a change that was going to be. And that a manager was standing there going, wow, now I've got somebody to vacuum the hallways. That's 8 hours a day off the menu. I don't have to worry about this. Now, because the 8 hours has to be, especially in the beginning, towards how do we implement this? How do we get it going? So you as leaders are going to have to be people that are going to have to think, okay, how do I take this change? How do I implement it? How do I remind my general manager, don't think you're taking 8 hours away from me, especially for the first month this thing is in place, because it's not going to happen. I need that time. Convincing an owner, because a lot of this stuff, like I noticed the UV lights, I looked at those, and those are $100,000. No owner is going to put $100,000 into something like that. A hospital will, but a hotel is going to be very, very difficult. So how do you convince an owner that that technology will work in that situation, and understand you as a leader are going to have a plan for implementation of that? So, sorry, Susan.
No, that's great. So I actually have a question. With those vacuums, would you use them then in rooms that have been checked out? Because if they're staying over and their stuff's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly, and they're still working through the technology. I'm now back in discussions with MaidBot about, they are claiming that their guest room, they can do the guest rooms now. So, but I am moving very, very slow, because I don't want to put that technology into a hotel and have it fail again.
Yeah.
So we're moving very, very slow to look at it, but they're claiming they've got that. What I keep saying to them is, good Lord, you can put AI into a 2-ton vehicle and roll it down the road and let it drive itself. Why the hell can't a vacuum just vacuum a room? And you think, well, I've got a Roomba. Well, how long does Roomba take to vacuum your house? You don't have that time. You've got to get it done in about 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's, how do you get the speed? How do you get all the different way of mapping? So yes, it will be a checkout. We're moving slowly. We'll see. In 2 weeks, I'll have more information.
Okay, well, we look forward to hearing about that. So I don't want to be the only one asking questions. I want to give a chance to all of you, and Ms. Evita Ma is going to chair our Q&A session with our panelists. Oh, go ahead. So if they've got questions, they can line up at the podium, correct?
Yeah, thanks again for your question. Anyone have any questions, please come to the front and then share your questions with the other audience.
Don't be shy. This is a great opportunity to ask them questions.
Yeah. Okay.
You can start us off, and maybe some will join you.
Yeah, I have one question about our employees actually. What were your employees' attitude or opinions on the technologies or new process like during the COVID
Were there any like dissenting voices? How did you deal with them?
I mean, from a restaurant perspective, again, you know, there wasn't too much. It was, I think the biggest thing, again, like I said, was, you know, I think it was more just training the guests. The employees pretty much embraced everything. Now we had to work with them, especially with some of the things that we were doing in the kitchen as well. But most of it was with the guests.
I can give an example that may not necessarily be pandemic related, but I think anytime you implement a new piece of technology or a new process, it's the same, pandemic or not. And the example I have is we have a wonderful ranch in Wyoming called Brush Creek Ranch that is an independent luxury ranch. But there there are a number of activities you can sign up for every day. You can go fishing, you can go to a culinary experience, you can go horseback riding, et cetera, et cetera. So we put in a new activity software last year that tracks what activity each of you want to do today or this afternoon or the next day versus an Excel spreadsheet is what we were on before, right? Well, we failed in year one of using that software. And the reason we failed is because I don't think we spent enough time setting it up properly on the forefront so that then the associates could be fast and quick and knowledgeable how to use it. So we're going to take another run at it this winter before we get into heavy season next year, but it's going to take practice, lots of practice and rehearsals to make sure that software is implemented. So I guess my moral of the story there is when you implement a new technology, there's a lot of things on the front end to make sure it works the way you need it to, so it's quick, so it actually adds value to your day instead of being another task. And in that particular example, version 1.0, we failed, but we'll get it the second time.
One of the technologies I think about is a technology, well, there's actually two. One is GXP in Marriott. If you work in a Marriott property, there's an internal system that we use. Well, it's part of the texting. It's part of the whole texting platform and the mobile key and stuff like that, but internally. Somebody calls the desk, it requests towels. If they do call, it goes into GXP, then it dispatches to somebody in the hotel to say, hey, room 101 needs towels. The housekeeping associate takes them to the room. They then hit it's done. It goes into the system. It's a lot easier to write it down and radio and not have to do that, not have to carry a mobile device and stuff like that. So yeah, there is pushback on that. Now, one thing I will say is that we have in some of our hotels, we have a technology called Hot Sauce for Housekeeping. So what you do is you break out the house and it goes on your board, your housekeeping board. Instead of being paper, you come in and you have a list of rooms. You get a mobile device. And on that mobile device, that's your board, okay? And so you clean a room, you hit a button that says, hey, I've started cleaning, you're done, you stop cleaning. If you have to, if there's a broken item in the room, you can report it on the phone. And then the mobile device tells you what your next room is. And it's great for us because it makes the breakout a lot easier. It's great for us too because if we all of a sudden are running short on queen rooms, we can tell Rex, push vacant queen rooms out to the housekeepers. And so we can expedite. In fact, Rex stands for Rooms Expediter. So there's a lot of really great stuff for us. But when we rolled it out to our first hotel, one of the things that was frustrating for our housekeepers is that in order for the system to push a room to them, it had to be vacant in the property management system. And so they might be cleaning room 101, and the next room that's vacant is 210. So it's telling them go from 101 to 210. Well, they get frustrated because they just saw the guest walk out of room 108 with their suitcase, and so they're like, give me 108, give me 108. And so we had to listen to them and then implement processes that would help them to figure out, okay, that makes sense, because otherwise I'm running between things. Now, the other thing is we had to go back to our accountants and go, guys, you got to understand that the efficiency that you get with some of this, sometimes it takes a little longer because it's sending them from room 101 to room 210. So until we can figure that out, don't expect it to be, the payback to be as big. So yeah, there's pushback. No question, there's pushback.
I'll add to, on top of Steve. So we have a program that we implemented. This was before COVID. It was called BevSpot. It's a beverage management inventory tool. And again, chiming in on what they were talking about, a lot of these tools are only as good as the person using them. So it's all about how it's set up. This tool, we have to put in all of our recipes for our cocktails. So the recipes have to be exact. You have to plug in all the inventory that you're carrying. All the prices have to be exact. And then if everything's set up properly, it connects to Micros, and as you're selling things, it's shooting that information to it, and the data that it can provide you, it tells you how much dead stock do you have. Why do you have so many bottles of Tito in stock? You only sell 10 bottles a week, and you're carrying 24. That's money that you're leaving on the shelf that should be somewhere else. Other things that it does is it actually calculates, like based on your forecast and what you've been ordering and what you've been using, it tells you what to order every week. So as an operator, it might take you 2 hours to figure out what you should order for the upcoming week. You can go into this tool if it's set up properly and just press a button and it tells you exactly. We've tested it. It's usually pretty accurate. So, but the properties that set it up right, it ends up saving them time in the long run. The ones that don't, they just do the same thing they've always done. So,
You were using, does this system have the chips that are, the microchips that are on the bottles to track inventory?
That's at the, we were talking, we have a ranch in Wyoming called Brush Creek Ranch that has one of the largest collections of wine in the world. I think it's worth $4 million. And to keep track of that wine, it's RFID tracking. So they put little tape and barcodes on the bottles that you can actually pull off. It doesn't damage the bottle. And then there's a little cart that it can move around, and it just registers everything, tells you what you have. Every time a bottle comes out, it registers it, so you know what's gone out, what's been missing, and you can balance that with what has been sold. When you have bottles that are worth $20,000, it becomes pretty important. So that's been a great tool. That's the only property that we have that at.
Yeah, we looked at RFID chips to put into linen because there are RFID chip systems that you can do, and the value of that is that you can inventory incredibly quick. Like, it will read, there are systems where you just pass a cart in front of the readers on all three sides, and it'll tell you exactly what is in that cart. Well, they're $1 a piece. And so washcloth is 80 cents. You're putting a $1 chip into there. The washcloth probably has a life of about 3 months before it's ruined and it's discarded. So it became too expensive. But I also became concerned because the companies approached me all the time, and I went back to him and I said, this guy says that you're using RFID chips in one of your properties. And so we'll have to go back and forth and go, hey, here's how it didn't work, and then I'll have to go back to the vendor and say, hey, it's not. Now, I do believe that RFID technology is going to be very important in inventory management, but there's only certain times that it will work. And again, it's something the employees have to get used to.
Any questions from students?
Somebody break the ice. Be brave.
Okay, just
There we go.
Hello. So you kind of talked about how technology lies in the hands of whoever is operating it, and then it's only as good as who is behind it. So would you say that when you're going about hiring new people, that you kind of have to change your standards a little bit, and that you that the people that you're hiring might start to be younger people rather than the older generations, given that generally younger generations are more tech savvy, And so that might have to be something that you have to look more into when you're hiring people, and that you might even have to turn away some people that might have experience in other areas.
Libby, is that, do I see the name correct, Libby? We would never discriminate on age. Let me start with that. But in all seriousness, we do ask questions about comfort level of technology, or when we're speaking to a candidate, whether it's a candidate who's been 20 years in the industry or a candidate who's coming fresh out of college, about their experiences and their positions before of what technologies they've used. You know, a lot of Marriott systems are very proprietary. The sales system we use is specific to Marriott. So if I have a candidate of any age that is well-versed in that system, and the many other questions we're going to ask about, I certainly would give them advantage because they're versed in that system. I think that's a great benefit of this hotel here becoming a part of the Autograph Collection. For those of you that are able, and I recommend you do, work here, having that experience here with their systems, no matter what department you're in, would give you a leg up. So yes, feeling comfortable in technology is very important. I think that's the root question you're asking me, and it is a part of, depending on which job we're talking about, what things we ask about. Yes.
I'll just add briefly onto that. You know, one of the things that culturally we do as a company is we look to hire people for 3 jobs ahead. So we're not hiring you for the job you're going to do today. And of course, your proficiency with technology is going to be an important factor, and definitely more important moving forward. But that's one of the things I love about our company is we're not seeking to fill a position. We're hiring people for what they can be later, and I think that's special.
I have a 34-year-old lady who works with me. Her name's Whitney. She's absolutely phenomenal. Anybody who opened this hotel would have met her. And it's fun because I'm able to go, okay, you handle this. This is more like your age stuff. But what I would emphasize, and what she understands greatly, is that it is still about the human interaction. And you have to remember, well, for instance, we get very concerned because some of these mobile technologies you are able to get on your phone. And while we want people to respond very quickly, the last thing I want is for somebody to walk up to my front desk and the person behind the desk is on the phone. I am going to go ballistic. Because that says, hey, you're an interruption of my time. And so we have to understand that technology, you all being very good at technology is a real plus. However, it's the human side, and you have to be able to bridge that gap. And you have to be able to understand that your use of technology, like you go into a room and everybody's on their phone. And people are texting back and forth in the same room. And our customers and the view of hospitality is not that. And so as you are leaders, yeah, your biggest strength can also be your biggest downfall. So learn to bridge the gap, learn to marry the two, and you're going to be incredibly successful. And I would like to thank you for being the first one to get up, to come up here, to ask us a question.
Thank you.
We have a $100 gift card for you.
Whoa.
Not really, but.
See, that's all it took.
Yes, she broke this too.
Hello. I have a question about the younger generation. So since the younger generation has more of the technology background, because we've kind of grown up with it, as you see them start their careers and start traveling for jobs, do you see an increase in the mobile keys and less interaction with the employees, or does it stay pretty consistent?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. But there is still an educational piece. And brands are really, one of the things to use, for instance, the Marriott mobile app, you have to be a Marriott Bonvoy member. You have to download that onto your phone. So again, the AI, the concern about, hey, you're going to use my information. I only want a certain number of apps downloaded onto my phone. Marriott very quickly during the pandemic went to another web-based. So you had a choice. You could do web-based check-in or you could do app check-in. So you didn't have to be a Marriott Bonvoy member. I'm reading more and more in press that there is a push that loyalty programs are not going to have the value that they once had. And so, and certainly your OTAs, your online travel agencies, are pushing their own loyalty programs, so you can stay anywhere. As long as they're fronting the reservation, you can stay anywhere. So you're not going to have the app downloaded. So I think we're going to have to adjust to that and figure that out, because if loyalty programs become less valuable, then maybe they don't want the Marriott Bonvoy app or the Hilton Honors app or the Hyatt, World of Hyatt app downloaded. But you absolutely, it's going to just become more and more and more prevalent, and they're not going to want to pick up a phone. My prediction is one day you're not going to have phones in the room. You just, it's going to be a technology. Yeah. Yeah, it's just not going to be used. So yeah, absolutely.
It may be a very simple example I'm going to provide, but last evening my parents were in town and we had pizza. However, what I'm about to share is if my parents were to have ordered the pizza, they would have picked up the phone and ordered it. I did it on my computer. The next generation probably would have done it on their iPhone. And that's about as simple as example as I can explain the evolution of generational small moments in the service industry. Right now, they're very capable of doing it on their computer or their iPhone, but they just go back to what they've always done before, and that is going that path. So for some reason, your question led me to that example, but I thought you might enjoy it.
Well, can I just say one more thing on this one, Virginia, is that we have to remember as leaders and as operators that just because the way they're communicating changed doesn't mean that we can take away that person executing it. We're looking at how, because of COVID, and because of the change in working expectations, more people want to work from home. And we really need front desk people. We can't find front desk people. So we were looking at, okay, what are some functions at the front desk that you can take to an at-home environment? And we thought, hey, we'll take all the pre-arrival planning. We'll take the blocking. We'll take the sending the mobile check-in notices, sending the mobile key notifications. Because we can figure out, okay, we can put somebody in their home and do this, okay? If airlines can take reservations, most airline reservations agents are sitting in their homes. So we started to look at that, and there's a lot of technology issues. That's not the point I'm going to make. But we began to realize is that it was not pre-arrival planning. We've renamed the position to Digital Experience Coordinator, because there has to be somebody back there grabbing all of this in the background and doing something with it. So you as operators have to remember that as people begin to do more and more and more of this on your phone, you as leaders have to have the support and the infrastructure behind it to make sure that it works. Because when it doesn't work, think about it. You go ballistic. And you got to make sure that it works. And that's where I didn't think about Digital Experience Coordinator. Whitney thought of that. Whitney said, you know, Steve, this is really about the digital experience. We need to rename this role. And now we are working, we just had a meeting with them yesterday with Marriott, and we're the first management company that is going to do this, because we're pushing it, and we're pushing them to say, you have to give us the technology to make this available, because I can't get people on my front desk. I need to be able to get somebody who needs to sit at home to do this in their off time. You guys figure it out. So as leaders in the industry, we have to remember that. As our customer changes, like you said, we have to change with them, and we have to look at, okay, what does this look like behind it? How do we support it?
I'll add just to that too. You know, from a restaurant perspective, we're physically designing restaurants dependent upon where they're located. Like the one I talked about earlier, Zombie Taco, is actually on University of Texas campus. So that's, you know, when I'm talking about pay at the table and that interaction, that probably wouldn't work in a different concept somewhere else. You know, and we're continuing to look at various concepts. We have one. some of our concepts, we call them something else behind the scenes because sometimes they have different names. We have one that's called an urban millennial coffee house, and we're going to continue to evolve, and I'm sure that concept is it's very tech savvy, and I'm sure that's going to continue to evolve over time. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is kind of about the pandemic as a whole. A lot of these technological changes have happened, like to deal with problems caused by the pandemic. Do you think that these solutions like would have happened without the pandemic, and it just kind of sped up the process? And are these changes like for the better, pandemic or not?
For me, I think the one thing that it has sped up is for the formula of the restaurant industry. I think we started off in my list of 5 and going to the automation piece so the demand is back, but the employees, not all of them have come back. There's a lot that I know that took COVID as an opportunity to rethink their lives, and I ended up in the restaurant business somehow, and maybe I want to try something new. Maybe they'll be back, I don't know. But a lot of people left, and that's kind of shrunk the pool of talent that we get to choose from. And then there's some that we think are going to come back, but we're not sure yet. So for me, that's probably a negative of COVID because it's accelerated things that inevitably probably would have happened down the road. But I'm not sure that we're prepared for it, and the employees that are working today are paying the price. And then we're doing whatever we can to support them, and it comes with intense recruiting, and we're doing crazy things like referral bonuses and things like that. And what we found is the best thing is use our own talent to find more talent. But the gist of my answer is just that's one thing COVID, I think, it didn't do justice for us. So, all right.
Yeah, I think in the meeting space environment, the technology that some companies were forced to jump into and use and adopt, it certainly sped that up. But to your point, it was probably coming sooner or later. And major conventions, they had to invest a lot more in audiovisual. Perhaps 3 years ago, they were still video recording a meeting such as this, but in the pandemic, they really had to increase those capabilities to broadcast it live to perhaps people all around the world. And that's a lot. There's a lot more to that than just having a camera on site, right? You've got to have better Wi-Fi. You've got to have better infrastructure of technology to push that out. So I think a lot of these major conventions that did that will continue to do that because now they can get more attendees around the world that will register and perhaps not fly in, and though they've actually broadened their audience of who might attend a convention in the future. So, and then back to my example earlier of a smaller company that maybe never used Zoom or Teams, they're in that game now, and it's going to be hard for them to turn back now that they've adopted that.
I think a lot of the technology was sped up, mobile check-in, mobile key, those kinds of things. Marriott wouldn't have necessarily found another option for checking in had this not come about. But I think also it was inevitable. I think what's driving it more now is the lack of employees. I don't think anyone would have predicted, well, there's always been and this is something now in this new role I'm really kind of focusing in on. There's always been demographic information that says we were headed to a labor shortage. There's always been that. But no one would have predicted that COVID would have sped this up the way that it sped it up. One of the ways that we were caught off guard is that we had international interns in a lot of our hotels, and they had to go home. So when we started back up, they couldn't get back in the country. So all of a sudden, a hotel that had 10 international interns going through rotations, they're gone. So now they've got to replace them. So yes, it sped it up, but I think, I was looking at robotics long before this because I felt like it was headed there. So.
Thank you.
Okay, for the time's sake, we're gonna stop here. So thanks everyone again for such a wonderful sharing. Let's pass the floor back to Dr. Goldman. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a couple of minutes. We want to do a little lightning round with you all to to share some things that came about due to the pandemic. And you tell us if you think it's something that the industry is going to keep, or are we going to see this fizzle out? And a lot of it you've touched on already, so I'm going to pick some maybe we haven't talked about. One is workcation. So some hotels were selling rooms to guests to work in from like 9 to 5 during the day because people are tired of working from home and they wanted that change of scenery. So it was a way to maybe bring in a little bit of money to the hotel during the pandemic. So allow them to work there, access Wi-Fi, things like that. Do you see that as still a viable option? Are we keeping that, or do you see it fizzling out as we get more overnight guests back? Fizzle.
Fizzle in the rooms, keep in small boardrooms.
Okay, good. Nice twist on that one. How about the COVID confident accreditation? So a lot of governments or had guidelines, or like here the HNLA had guidelines. So if hotels implemented certain plans that were meeting expectations of cleanliness, sanitation, things like that, guests could know that this hotel is participating in this kind of COVID confident. Do you see that as still hotels just keeping that, maybe even if the government doesn't say you have to follow this? Is that something you would keep or fizzle out?
You're the expert in this one, but my feeling would be that, at some point it may not be called COVID confident, but heightened awareness of cleanliness and sanitation will be, it was always top of mind in restaurants,
Yeah.
and I think we did a great job with it, and we have policies and procedures put in place that we didn't really change, but it'll be top of mind more than ever for maybe forever.
Yeah.
So,
I'd say the marketing of it will fizzle. Think of the millions of dollars that companies spent over the last 2 years to market electrostatic sprayers, or Hilton did a program where they literally put a sticker on every guest room after it's been cleaned, so they know that it's been not been touched since that moment when you enter. There's a ton of marketing that went around that, videos that were created, and they have to pay to push out the video. You have to pay for the stickers. A lot of rental cars did similar things as well. So I think it'll become table stakes, the processes, but the marketing of it will fizzle.
Agreed. I think you have to remember that the guest's perception of sanitation and safety is visual. So they expect you've sanitized. It's visual that really makes a difference. So we'll focus more on visual and less on the marketing of it.
Okay, very good. Okay, I think I only had time for those two, but I want to thank you. If you guys will join me in thanking our panelists for your time today.